Life tends to feel a lot more fulfilling when you approach it with hope and optimism, even if that mindset isn't always the most realistic. And that's the attitude I try to bring to the sci-fi and fantasy franchises I care about. Star Wars, for example, I totally get why many people see it as a lost cause at this point. There's been a lot of disappointment, but I still like to imagine ways the franchise could turn things around with fresh, engaging stories that aren't weighed down by past mistakes. To me, it all comes down to leadership. The future of Star Wars, no matter how bleak it seems now, will depend heavily on who eventually takes over Lucasfilm once Kathleen Kennedy steps down. There have been rumors she might retire around D23 this August, but I'm not holding my breath. As for who might replace her, there's not much solid info out there. A lot of fans throw Dave Filoni's name into the ring, but just being honest here, if it is Filoni, I don't think there's any hope. I think he's fine for what he's doing as far as animation, but not for the entirety of Lucasfilm. He's not competent for that. I've got some thoughts on the kind of person Lucasfilm should be looking for to replace Kathleen Kennedy, but I'll get into that a little later. For now, I think another huge part of the equation is the consistency and quality of the storytellers that the new studio head chooses to bring on. That's where a real shift could happen. I was honestly a bit surprised by some of the things I heard from Star Wars Celebration this year in Japan, in particular hearing from Sean Levy and Ryan Gosling about their upcoming Star Wars Starfighter film. They actually seem to have a clear mission statement and a thoughtful approach to telling a fresh, unconnected story in the universe. It's early days, but at least from what they shared, it sounded like they were genuinely trying to do something with substance. Their mission statement, I like and can appreciate. And then when you compare that to, let's say, a Leslie Headland, who did not have any love for Star Wars. She's not a fan. She actively went out of her way to bastardize George Lucas's films. She criticized the auteur myth that you had to adhere to the original creative. She hated that idea. She thought that that was misogyny to do that, to be faithful to what the original creator built. She's the example of what not to do. She didn't have to set her story, a prequel story, so close to the prequel films to where she now made Yoda and Ki-Adi-Mundi part of the narrative, and in so doing corrupted the prequel films. That's the one thing that at least Kathleen Kennedy said right after she decanonized the previous EU. She said that the films were going to be the lore moving forward, and clearly not, because they went out of their way to even dismiss and bastardize just the films, what that established. So that's the lesson of what not to do. There's been several things too with Ahsoka that I've not appreciated. Like, if you don't want to do and recognize the Legends canon, then don't scavenge and cherry pick those characters to bring them into your new stuff. Like with Thrawn. Thrawn is possibly one of the most beloved villains aside from Darth Vader. He is right up there, and they completely ruined him and made him an idiot in the Ahsoka show. I mean, first of all, they brought him in an animated form for Rebels. He was incompetent there as well, but even more so in live action. All of his plans fell through, and he just always would say a blanket statement, yes, I meant that to happen. One of the most devious, intelligent, military-minded characters, one of the most disciplined, strategic minds, they made an idiot. It's very unfortunate. So they pilfered him from what creatives already wrote and that fans loved, just so a Clone Wars era character could face off against him. So that's why I don't like Dave Filoni, that he pilfers other people's ideas and characters just to build up his own Clone Wars creations. And we're not in that timeline anymore. That's what hurts the most. We're in the time of Han, Luke, Leia, and Lando, and we're still doing Clone Wars stuff? Where is Luke? Where is Han and Leia? Okay, so you have The Mandalorian, and you have Andor, and now you have Starfighter, and these have the most potential, but it's sad because these are not Force-focused stories, and that's what makes Star Wars to me. Their most successful things have been disconnected from the Force. What makes Andor interesting, though, is you have the growing conflict between the Empire and this growing rebellion that is at the heart of Star Wars 2. It's an interesting story, but if we're just going to continue on that, then that's a shame, because what makes Star Wars, what makes it so unique is the Force, is the battle between good and evil and the light side and the dark side. And I don't know if they can even get that right. They need someone who can tell stories like that. And I don't know if they can at this moment. And even with Starfighter, I mean, I don't have hope for that as far as the mythology of Star Wars. If it's just a small contained story about one lone starfighter, it's fine. But is that Star Wars? The heart of it should be the Force. I don't know if that's going to be something they're going to incorporate into the story somehow. But if you do, I mean, then it's going to lead to Rey. And I don't want that. And they said it's not a sequel, so she can't be a part of it. But if you can do this part, right? You've proven it well with Andor. And when The Mandalorian was good, you proved it there. That you don't have to do all of the stories that are Force focused. And that's fine, yeah, because there's lots of cool parts of the universe that George created that isn't Force focused on the light and dark side. But you should get that right. And then you have all of these other cool parts of the mythology that you can dive into, like specifically the conflict from the Rebel side. That's interesting. But yeah, what makes Star Wars so unique is the Force. And hopefully they can get that right at some point when you have people who even understand it that are in charge. And it's not Kathleen Kennedy and it's not Dave Filoni. They just messed it up so hard, especially with the Force, with the Acolyte. They want to make it gray. Everything is gray morality. And that's not interesting. I'm sorry. They think that's interesting, of having light side protagonists be corrupted and highlight their failings. They want the dark side characters to be seen as sympathetic and heroic even by their selfish actions. And that's just not interesting. That's not Star Wars. It was always the conflict between good and evil, and it's a classic story for a reason, because people like it. They are engaged and engrossed in it. If they can understand that moving forward, then maybe there is hope. At the end of the day, you have to get the Force right. You have to understand these core concepts that George Lucas incorporated into his mythology. That is the key. There is a way forward. There is a way. There is hope. Star Wars doesn't have to remain dead. You just have to give the fans what they want. You have to understand the responsibility that you have and being a steward of George Lucas's mythology. There definitely needs to be changes, and changes from the top. Kathleen Kennedy has ensured that there's just this horrible foundation of sand when it comes to new stories. She's burned a lot of bridges, I'm sure. There has to be more of an indication that change is coming, and you have to show that you're pivoting towards George Lucas's universe and stories. If Disney and Lucasfilm haven't learned this lesson by now, then I can't help you. We just want good stories. We want it to hail from the spirit of George Lucas. We want someone who understands his themes. There are very few competent writers in Hollywood. They're there, but other people are given precedent when they don't deserve it. So other people could have come in for like the Rings of Power. There are definitely more competent writers that could have come in and handled that show. But instead, they gave it to two guys who had no experience whatsoever. So there is this trend of seeking out people who have no experience. Ronald D. Moore, I think, could do a lot for the Star Wars franchise, and I think he could help manage that. So if you're looking for other creatives to handle the franchise as a whole, Ronald D. Moore would be up there for me. He's proven competent. He's paid his dues as a writer way back on Star Trek, and then he's shown how he's been able to handle beloved franchises like Battlestar Galactica, and he's doing other things too on his own that are good. For All Mankind, he's doing another spin-off of that. I think I just saw that he's doing Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. He's doing a series, God of War. I think that would be a good fit because he's had previous experience in Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica, as well as proven his own competence in starting his own stories with spin-offs attached. So someone like that, they're there. Obviously, there's some creative differences going on behind the scenes too. I think they want people who are inexperienced because they're more controlled, and then they can just blame them for when things ultimately go south, like they did with Nia DaCosta, The Marvels. They didn't come out and say that Leslie Headland was a bad choice, but clearly from the start she wasn't a good choice. There are people out there, whether or not they can get them and keep them, that's another thing entirely. But that's what the job of a producer is supposed to do. It's what Kathleen Kennedy is, her one job that she was supposed to be good at. So once she's out, the next step is absolutely critical. If I'm going to hold on to any hope for the franchise, it really hinges on who they bring in to take the reins. Without the right leadership, unfortunately, I think Star Wars is just going to keep floundering, stuck in the same cycle of missed potential and continued decline. But I'm curious to know how you feel about the future of Star Wars. Is there anyone in particular you feel could replace Kathleen Kennedy and bring hope back to the franchise? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did, and be sure to subscribe for more sci-fi and fantasy news, theories, and lore. And if you're looking for other ways to support the channel, you can leave a super thanks or join as a YouTube member for early access to new videos and other perks. You can also check out my Patreon page for exclusive content. Thank you all so much for your support. And as always, have a very nerdy day.